Hi, it's Beth here. Okay, it's episode 249, September 4th. It's still me. I'm still over 65 and I'm still talking. But I want to talk about something that happened. Well, it happened a few days ago. I had lunch with Paula, and the most wonderful cousin anyone could ever have. And I kind of lost her till Audrey's parents moved to town. So here she was meeting her grandchild, Audrey, which is just the biggest thing ever because she's great. And I visited one day. We had a great time. And I'm staring at Audrey the whole time, so is she. But we have a little bit of a talk about our childhood. And our childhoods are, because we intermingled quite a bit. I would have liked to have moved to Oyster Bay to be in her town, but we couldn't quite afford it. So I lived in Roslyn. She lived in this idyllic setting. A house on Oyster Bay. Just with cousins right next door. And I mean, boy cousins, like 4 boy cousins, a beautiful little baby sister, fun all the time. And then right after that, the other sister moves down the street, and now there are more cousins, 2 boys and a girl. She had a posse. And cousins are, you can do no wrong. You'll always be forgiven. They all went to school together, St. Dominic's. I had to live in Roslyn, which was okay, but in my neighborhood, everyone went to the public school. So I was not ostracized, they just didn't even care. You walk out on the street at Paula's house, there's action, there's fun. Uncle Jim, her father, had a golf cart that we could play with all the time, and a Jeep where you press the button and it turned on from World War II. And all this open space. And then the other neighbor had a well so you could drink water. You never had to come inside. This was my dream setting. I would have loved to have lived near these people. But I didn't, but I got to spend weekends with them, have fun with them. And Paula was showing me pictures, and she showed me this one picture where it's a picture of both of my mother and her brother is Paula's father. And it was those children mixed up. Everybody looks great except for me. I have this walleye expression that I still get when I'm very confused about what I'm supposed to do. And it's because every time we went over to their house, oh my God, we'd get the golf cart going. The cousins would come over, and we'd have this shillelagh war. It was a shillelagh war. So what happened was we all had shillelaghs, and the guys on the golf cart had shillelaghs, and they would beat you, and you would try to beat them back with your shillelagh. This appealed to me somehow, much more than my brother, much more than anyone, and I would end up getting filthy, my dress ripped, and my hair in tangles every single time. And my mother was kind of not in competition with Paula's mother, but I was the only girl that was a tomboy. It wasn't even a tomboy. I was a wild animal. And I always ended up ripping my dress, stains on it, bloody knees, whatever. Couldn't have cared less. But I'd have to come back into the room, the side room where the adults were having cocktails, and I would look like an animal. So in this particular picture, my mother has read me the riot act, and I remember it. Don't you dare get filthy. Don't you dare scream where I can hear you. Don't you dare get bloody. Don't you dare ruin that dress. And I would always do it. Well, this one particular time, and I swear it's the very same time, this memory came to me last night in a dream. And what happened was I couldn't resist the shillelagh wars and how I did it. And I come into the kitchen because you always have to go to the bathroom. These parties would last for hours and hours and hours. And I come into the kitchen, and there was Uncle Jim, my hero. And he asked me to come over to where he was. And he took me into the butler pantry, which I didn't even know this house had, and I'd slept over I don't know how many times. He took me into the butler pantry, and he had a little saucepan and like a face cloth. And he said to me, and he used to call me Mary Beth. Mary Beth. He was the only one I liked the way it sounded when he would say it. He said, Mary Beth, I'm just going to need some of this dirt back from my garden. You've gotten all the dirt. I'm just going to need it back. And he started to, like my arms, my legs, my face. And he put my hair back in a rubber band. And then he said, you know what? I've got this little whisk broom. They call it a wardrobe broom. I don't know if it works. I've had it for years. Let me see what we can do. And he held out my dress. And with this whisk broom, a lot of the dirt that was dry just went through it. And he said, let me get some of that dirt that's fallen to the ground because my garden needs it. He cleaned me up. And then he said, you know, I've got a secret passageway to an upstairs bathroom. And it was the maid's staircase, which I don't even think I'd ever seen. He said, go up there, go straight ahead, and you'll see the bathroom. And I did. And he said, I'm going to wait here for you because I've got things I'm doing. I've got important things I'm doing. And so he stayed and he waited for me. I come down the staircase and he said, look, go back outside, have a good time, and you look great, kid. If my mother had seen me looking the way I looked before he got a hold of me, we would have left. I mean, what a guy. This is my uncle. I knew he was great, but I hadn't remembered that story until I saw that picture. Paula and I had this lunch. We were out for 4 hours. She was filling in gaps in my story. I filled gaps in her story because we had a different perspective. We were visitors. And she actually told me something nice about my family, which was, well, it was a complicated story because she would stay sometimes because her dad worked for this company called something McCormick. And he'd have to go traveling and they would come and stay. One time they stayed and I had a brother who was very sick and all the pictures were taken down and all mention of him was stopped because he had many anomalies, including what I found out at the very end from my father, which was Down syndrome. But no pictures. I would search for pictures because it was like he vanished into thin air. That's the 50s. My mother was going to have a nervous breakdown if anybody talked about it. So all the pictures and any mention of him was gone. But Paula had stayed with us when he was sick. And she remembered him. And she'd heard about the sick baby and be nice, Paula, while you're there. Because, you know, Aunt Joan has a sick baby. And she said he was wearing a bandage on his face, which I thought was in my head. I was looking for bandages my whole life, but I never mentioned it to anybody. I thought he had a bandage on his face. I mean, he died before he was a year old, way before he was a year old. And I was just a little tiny kid. Paula's a year older than I am, so she's very smart. And she told me he did have a bandage on his face. I thought I dreamed that up. It's like, I'm telling you, find a cousin who grew up with you, but came to visit. And you will hear stories. You will be validated on things you thought were true, that you weren't sure were true. But she did give me one gift. Well, she gave me a lot of gifts. She's always given me a lot of gifts. But one of them was, she said that my family was fun. I told her family was unbelievable. And I had a million ways to prove it. But she said to me at this lunch, your family was wonderful. Your family was fun. I was like, really? Because my parents didn't get along. She said, yes, I was at your house and spontaneous things would happen every time I came. I'm like, really? She said, yeah. Like one day we had breakfast and your mother just looked at all of us and she said, we're going to Jones Beach. And you all jumped up, got your bathing suits on, and you were in your car. She said things like that never happened at my house. I was like, really? And I just feel so much better. Like, we did have fun. There were good things. They weren't as grand and glorious as her good things, but that was a thing that we did. Sundays would happen, especially if the weather was bad, and my father would say, get dressed up like you're going to church. We're going in town, which was New York City. And he would take us to a restaurant he loved, like the Sign of the Dove or whatever. And it would just happen out of the blue. We'd go on trips out of the blue. Sometimes he got tickets at the airport for his family to go on a trip. We were never early for a plane. We were always running to make the plane. It was exciting. It was exhausting, but it was exciting. But for Paula, just coming to visit, I could see what she was saying. And I'm telling you, you have people still in your life. Paula and I are still here. We're like late 60s, but we're still here. We go back in time like we're kids. And it's just so nice to see my life from another point of view. You got a cousin like that somewhere. Call him up. I know we can't travel or do anything now. Just call him up and see if you can go back and see what you looked like from another point of view. Thank you, Paula. It's so lovely. I'm very proud of that. We were spontaneous. We were fun. We were a little chaotic and a little scary, but we were fun and we were spontaneous. And that's a gift. Those are the good characteristics of chaos and spontaneity go hand in hand. But spontaneity is great. And that's the price you pay. Like, I imagine, I wouldn't know, but I imagine a stayed life or a controlled life or a life where things that are out of the blue don't happen is also very comforting, especially for a child. But I had my life. I had what it was. And she brought me back to it. And the story about Uncle Jim, it came back fully blown. I could almost feel it. And I'd forgotten it completely. His kindness was, but it was just he and I. And he was talking to me. He was asking me about what my teacher's name, my nun's name was. And I think I was in third grade. He was asking me if I did the multiplication tables. He didn't just stay silent. We had a conversation. He asked me what 3 times 3 was because I was doing the multiplication tables. He told me he hated 8 times 7. He was we talked. And when it was over, before I went outside, I hugged him, which when you're a 50s kid, you never hugged anyone. You got hugged. He didn't make the first move, but I made the first move with him, and he said, "Oh, Mary Beth, you go out there and you have fun. You have fun, Mary Beth, just go." And I thought, wow. So anyway, just a beautiful memory, but you've got them too. You only know your point of view, and you were 4 or 5. You need to look at it from someone else's point of view, and a child's point of view, not an adult, because they were in the other room drinking and smoking. Another child, looking at the very same thing you looked at from a different perspective. Absolutely a gift from God. So, thank you for my dream last night. It was unbelievable. A little NyQuil helped. I'm telling you the truth. I can't lie to you. I took NyQuil, slept through the night. I think right before I woke up, I had good dreams because I was sleeping like a normal person. But there was Uncle Jim right there. So thank you, Paula. Thank you for lunch. And I'm telling you, if you have anybody in your life, like my cousin Paula, call them up and ask them what they saw. It's a way to stay sane. Take care, and I will be back. Bye-bye.